So, we call the regular BPW board meeting for July 24th to order. First of all, let's have the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. A moment of silence. Thank you. So, the record show, we have the full complement of the board here. We have Andrew Williams, the mayor, Austin Callan, our general manager, Robin Davis, assistant general manager, and Michael Hoffman, legal counsel. Oh, and, yeah. So, we have the consent agenda.
I want to pull minutes out. There's one small correction.
Okay. So, with the minutes polled, which one? Is it both of them?
Just the last meeting.
Okay. So, the consent agenda, including the February 28th, 2024 minutes. Do I have a motion?
Motion to accept those minutes of February 28, 2024.
And the remainder of the consent agenda.
Yes, and the remainder.
I'll second that.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
So, at that point, press?
We were discussing on the printed version, page 8, the minutes where we talked about the paragraph above it said, we stated that it's already high. Well, the next one, we need a discussion for completion. But the last item about the, sorry about that. The comment was here, what's printed, it was the board to request planning commission environmental subcommittee address importance of protection of BPW assets, help homeowners offer recommendations. I think that was referring to the city's environmental board. It wasn't clear. And what we talked about is that Robin and I would identify things that the city might want to look at as far as the impacts on BPW's assets, sewers, storm sewers, and I mean not storm sewers, but bathroom sewers, floor sewers, tubs, toilets, and things like that. Robin and I did look at that. And as we recently discussed, most of the things that we came up with the exception of perhaps the circuit breaker box, are plumbing issues. And we're in discussions about whose responsibility that is. So I just wanted to clear that was said, what was said here.
So, do you have,
any changes, give that to Sharon, and I can have her
Yeah,
adjust on.
I'll do that. Okay.
and should we then bring it back to the next meeting?
Yes.
Okay,
Can we? Oh,
all right.
all right. That's
All right.
all.
So, let the record show that the February 28th, 2024 meeting minutes will be revised and brought back at our next board meeting.
May I? As long as we're discussing them, there was a typo. Should I just send that to Sharon?
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, moving on, receive info report. Jeff?
Good afternoon. I wanted to start by introducing Nathan Laux. He's the new regional manager for this area. He's replacing Mike Wilgemuth. So he will be here. He will also be at the walkthrough next Thursday for anyone who is attending.
I was going to ask when whether it had been scheduled. I didn't
Yes,
have it.
next Thursday, I believe it's 10 a.m. So, update on the Headworks project. The 5mm screen has been completed. It is back in production. It went faster than anticipated. The 2mm is going to be completed as of right now. On the 19th, they'll be back in to the 2mm screen. There was a mix-up on some washers being ordered. The washers were supposed to be 1mm thick. They came in at 2.5. They cannot put the screen back in with those washers. You can't get the snap rings in place. So those have to be replaced. Also, there are some bearings that need to be replaced as well, and those have to be on site before we can do it.
Can you just stop there?
Yes.
So what was the condition of the membranes?
They were very bad.
Talking about the screens?
Oh, the screens, I'm sorry.
What I was told was that these were some of the smallest screens that this technician had ever worked on. They were also some of the, if not the worst condition he's ever seen.
It's also conducive to the screens that have been installed since 2008.
That is
haven't
correct.
been refurbished, so.
Right.
So, which is also the issue with the bearings. Those bearings have been in operation for 15 years, and he's almost positive he cannot remove them without damaging them, so we need to replace the bearings. The flight pump for the 2mm has been tested and is operational. The JWC compactor was tested. There was an issue with an electrical component in the panel. That part has to be replaced. Bilbro is trying to source that currently. The Drake Knoll pump station, that work was completed. A new above-ground junction box was put in. All new floats were run and new wires going back to the control panel. I also did want to bring note to one issue with the Veolia report. On the first, it showed that our peak flow was 2.05 million gallons. That is incorrect. So we've had an ongoing issue with that intermittently, where the totalizers do not reset on the first of the month. So that is a combination of the 31st and the 1st. Any questions?
So, first, are the digester walls still being washed down part of the weekends?
Yes, so the digester walls, we're washing them down. We've also ordered and just received a odor control spray that we're going to coat on the walls once a week and see if that helps with that as well. So we're going to be washing the walls down and then coating them with a spray that should help eliminate the odors on that. We're also going to try to implement the spray at pump station 4 to eliminate any issues there that the BioAir is not catching.
So a week ago, Sunday, I was riding by the plant, and it wasn't offensive, but you could smell the digester.
Yeah. We did have an issue with that, so that's another thing that we had to do. The VFD for the digester had to be replaced, so the digester did have a bit of an upset in process. The VFD had to be replaced, the pump had to be replaced. That's all been done, and it's back up and operational. Everything's good, but we have that odor control spray in now that we're going to coat the walls with to try to eliminate that issue.
The 5-ton crane repair, any notes, progress?
I believe that, Vince, do you know? No. So the last I heard is we had two different answers. We got a quote from Americrane that GMB received, and then we also received M2 talked to their contact, and they said it was beyond repair.
The whole crane?
Yes,
Or the
they said they could not certify it due to the bend in the structure.
That's what Charlie was working on that.
So that was the last I heard, and Charlie wanted to talk to Americrane again to clarify what they were saying on whether it could be repaired or not.
So how are we lifting cassettes at this point then?
We could do it if we had to, it's just not ideal, or,
Yes, what happens is the crane becomes off-centered, you can still lift, like everything remains the same, it's just sometimes depending how the momentum goes, because it's chain driven, if it's moving in one direction, you may have like a slight offset on one side, which makes it a little more difficult.
I guess what was
More
kind of,
difficult or dangerous?
No, I mean, I've been down there with them, and what happens is it gets stuck. It doesn't necessarily prohibit the use of it, but then that report, as it relates to the one that M2 got, I haven't seen that one, so I can't comment on that one.
yeah, I'm just concerned about the comment you made about it's not certifiable.
what I was told is that they cannot certify the crane due to the bend, that they would have to replace the structure.
So not the crane, but the.
The structure itself.
structure will-
The entire structure,
Yes, that's my understanding.
which is
Which
opposite
is why-
from other firms.
Which is why Charlie wanted to talk to Americrane again, was to see, because Americrane said they could certify it. So he was trying
The
to,
structure is freestanding inside there,
Yeah,
Yeah,
and the crane goes kittywampus. That's a technical term.
It's bolted to the foundation, it's not bolted to the actual building itself.
right.
but it's not just one piece of the steel that's in there. It's, the whole thing has to be replaced.
That's what
That's-
one vendor.
that's what one vendor did say.
The other vendor is saying the
Yeah.
opposite, so.
So Charlie wanted to speak in more detail with Americrane about that, to clarify that they would certify it and it would be safe for use. And that was the last update I got on that.
And what size crane is it again?
5-ton.
So, not so big.
But if it was replaced, we would replace it with hydraulic operation, not chain driven. Because it's hydraulic operated from left to right, but chain driven from side to side. Left to right, but front to back.
Jeff, what about have you heard back from Kubota yet on?
I have not. I would reach out to them because they had said 3 to 4 weeks, and I think that was about 5 weeks ago. So I need to be hearing back from them.
Okay.
But
So I think, want to just step into some very large shoes that was our previous. Once again, the effluent quality has been excellent. I mean, we are really putting out very high quality water to the canal. And last one. The last Viola report talks about the leap being in high a long period of time. Is it just strictly the heat that's causing that, or what's driving that? The blowers,
the leap air,
yeah,
so the leap air will kick in based on the TMPs.
right.
So if we're having, or the flows also. So we've had a couple of higher flow days as well.
Because I think the July report that you sent, not the one that's buried in here, had it at, between the 3rd and the 4th, and then after the 21st, running what Viola qualified as high.
Yeah, I'd have to go back and look at that one. That was the one that just came in.
Yeah, so it's not actually in this package.
Okay. I'd have to look at those numbers, but I will double check on that.
Okay,
How's the new electrician working out?
Good,
Good.
good.
It seemed like there were a lot of activities that
He's
involved
still
electrical repairs,
learning.
catching up.
Yeah, he's still learning some things with wastewater specific activities,
Yeah.
but he's doing very well.
any other questions for Mark? All right, Jeff, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Very nice to meet you. We'll see you next Thursday. All right, so moving on, next item, the president's report. So we had a joint executive session with the city, Sussex County planning meetings for the Rehoboth Beach presentation. The BPW in Sussex County went and presented to Rehoboth Beach Council on July 8th. Strategic planning, we had the last meeting on that, and they're just taking the comments, and we expect to put that on the August agenda. So the rest of the board will get to see the output and comments at that point. We had a leadership meeting with Austin and the city. And the other item I wanted to bring up here is residents may have gotten, I think most residents got a notice from, about nitrogen testing. This has nothing to do with the Lewes Board of Public Works. Our testing is done to state and federal guidelines on a routine basis. The nitrogen testing, it went out basically to the 19958 zip code. So it's territory outside of us, but just wanted to show the public that we do maintain testing, our testing requirements. Austin, do you have anything you want to add?
Nope, that's it.
You know, I think it was misleading in many cases, I mean, in many ways. It mentioned that wells have nitrates in them occasionally. And it implied that users of Lewes, because it had Lewes right on that
Right,
postcard that was sent. And it kind of implied that we had nitrates in our wells. And that's not the case at all. And we, like Tom said, we had nothing to do with that.
And the company that's sending it out is also the company selling their services.
Yeah.
Yes.
all right. Austin, general manager's report?
So Donovan Smith continues to work. As I think I mentioned last month, still aiming for mid-August, on the sewer, and then, mid-September on the water. Work continues at the wastewater treatment plant, as, Jeff had mentioned. And we work to continue to update all of the 4th Street and Hornkill applications to make sure that they were submitted by the state and going to WEAC for final approval in September. We had our meeting with Rehoboth Beach Commissioners. I thought it was a good meeting. We continue to work on the LCR items. It's the lead and copper. Most of the public will probably get notifications on it. There are surveys to go through. We have a video on our website that Sharon put together that's very, very educational. I encourage anybody to go to our website, take a look at it. We have PFAS, we have lead and copper, we have a whole bunch of resources there. What we're trying to do is create our inventory, which includes both Board of Public Works items and also private side items to meet the federal requirements. That will be submitted ahead of the deadline, which I believe is October 16th. We also met with Census on a possible alternative to AMI. So we'll keep you informed as we kind of learn more. It was kind of a brief discussion, learn about what they were offering. And then our idea is we'll kind of gain a little bit more information, then bring that back to the board. We also are scheduled to visit Newark's water treatment plant with the city of Rehoboth Beach. They actually installed an activated carbon and reverse ion exchange system at their facility. So we want to take a look at that, see how that operates, see how they like it. And I've talked to them a couple times ahead of that meeting just to kind of get an understanding. We also met with Sergeant Lundy to talk about the battery project and kind of holistically all kinds, everything to deal with electric. And we continue to work towards our NIPTES permit renewal. I got kind of the draft back today of the permit, so I have 2 weeks to put comments down. Jeff got it as well, so we're gonna take a look at it before it goes out for publication. I think that's it. Kim, anything on financials, or are you good as board adopted consent?
Yeah, the board adopted the consent, but just overall that we're doing better than budgeted, and there's a new projection in your packet with the actuals of that we're expected to have about 9.2% higher than net income than originally budgeted.
That's all I have.
Moving on, new business. First item, open forum general discussion on the report from the BPW Mitigation Committee. Let the record show that Presley just passed around the revised document. And at that point, I'm going to turn it over to Press.
At the previous meeting, we discussed the responses from the mitigation committee, recommendations from the mitigation committee. And we realized that they, even though we presented it to the board before, previously, it's never really been accepted. So this is just a formal exception of what was decided for the criteria for the mitigation report. Three major things: the planning design year as being 2050, the projected sea level rise to be used for the future designs was a combination of taking the FEMA 2015 flood year and the projected sea level rise of 1.38 feet added to that, plus the subsidence of 0.26 feet, and then recommending a 3-foot freeboard. For instance, properties shown in FEMA 2015 100-year maps for like zone AE7, the recommended design elevation would be those numbers: 7 feet plus 1.38 plus 2.6 feet, 0.26 feet plus 3 feet, which would make the recommended design elevation for 2050 11 feet, 11.64 feet. For instance, AE8 would be you'd start with an 8-foot elevation and take it from there. At AE9, you do the calculation using the 9-foot elevation, previous 9-foot elevation. The board settled on design wind load that we should design to at that time, going forward, at 120 miles per hour. In the committee, the BPW and the board, the mitigation committee, identified all BPW assets that they felt were susceptible to climate change. They developed a map locating those assets, prepared an asset spreadsheet that shows the type of asset, the location, the 2015 FEMA flood zone designation, the XY and lateral longitudinal coordinates, and the site elevations. We also came up with a schedule of implementation of the various flood zones. For example, for the AE sub zone, we would anticipate or suggest starting the revisions to the assets in 2030. Any new assets being built that should be put to the suggested elevations immediately if they're being modified majorly or replaced. For the facilities in the AE8 zone, we suggested 2040, and the AE9 zone, the 2050, that the elevations, those assets should be modified and raised. And we also, the committee also reviewed the existing wastewater treatment plant and city emergency response plans and commented on those. So I guess I'd like to have a motion to accept the criteria three criteria that we suggested.
So just one point of clarification. What press presented is 100% accurate, but I just want to go on record that this is about sea level rise and subsidence. It is not about coastal storms, either hurricanes or nor'easters. So, as we've discussed many times before, those storm flood events cannot be predicted. We are protected by barriers, sand dunes, and the angle of attack, the fetch. So much more goes into them that FEMA does not have flood maps that represent storms. So, just wanted to.
Barbara, do you have any comments, or Bob? They're both on the committee.
Yeah, it also, if we're putting barriers around this, what it covered and what it didn't cover electrical.
I was gonna get to that.
Okay,
I
okay.
wanted to get through this.
And I wondered also, in terms of, I missed what you said about the schedule for implementation.
The schedule for implementation that the committee came up with
Yeah.
for items in the AE7 zone would be 2030.
2030.
And for the AE8 zone, 2040, and the AE9 zone, 2050.
Good, thank you. And will we have regular updates from staff on how we're doing on that schedule? Austin?
As for that,
Yeah.
they'll do.
But just so I can understand, so if we pass this today, is this saying that we would modify all assets in the AE7 by 2030?
Yes. Yes.
Yeah, you're gonna have to, oof. Cause that's gonna hit back on budget too.
Yeah.
I know it's not in the president's 10-year budget, 10-year program.
Yeah.
And you have a study ongoing on how to do that, right?
We have a study on 16 pump stations that reside in the floodplain, not designated AE7, AE8, et cetera.
But can you or in-depth evaluation of the specific assets and let us know what's more realistic?
Those are specifically looking at sewer, so pump stations in the floodplain. Go ahead, Mike.
One recommendation, instead of seeking a motion to set that as a policy here tonight, perhaps it's a motion to direct staff to come up with a plan on how to implement those three. And then staff can then come back with the plan, because there may be budget implications
Right.
to Austin's point. And so then it could say, all right, in order to do that, this is what we need to do, here's the plan, and then the board can take that action. So maybe the action tonight is based on the work of the committee to direct staff to report back on how to accomplish these
I'll
things.
change my motion to that. Bob, any comments?
No, I think this was a good committee, and it came up with some realistic recommendations for our problem here. And, yeah, the hard part is working that into. But if we were gonna do something in the AE7 project now, it ought to be looked at in terms of raising to that 11.64 or hardening to that 11.64. You know, rather than sort of putting it off and having to come back to it after we have a storm or disaster or worse.
So, just to clarify and help maybe even in my mind, so the motion would be to approve the recommendations as set forth and direct staff to come up with an implementation schedule that we would then take up later.
Correct, and it's more technical. It's a motion to accept the recommendations as presented and direct staff to present a plan next month, 2 month, whatever it is, on how to implement to the board.
So move.
Do you want it next month or two? What's reasonable, Austin?
Well, the only thing would be, do they want the study completed through the FEMA grant that would go through each pump station with design standards and have that lead the discussion? Because that is actively started with GMB. And I'm
Yeah.
thinking that may be a year, but that puts you at 25 and you would have 5 years to implement, and you're only looking at like the pump stations in AE7, because you're not talking electrical, correct? And water, you're not gonna raise a fire hydrant to 11 feet.
Well, electrical to the point of, raising the connections and so forth. I think it has to be involved with the electrical to that point.
What,
And have the services to the pump stations, say,
I include that all as one, yeah,
Yeah, okay.
I'm including that as electrical.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, but not the electrical transmission system.
No.
That's what we'll be getting to next.
Yeah.
I was trying to remember when did we talk about ground level transformers as part of the mitigation committee?
We mentioned them, but solution, we said that
Elevated, yeah.
elevated to be out of harm's way.
Just to put a finer point, so when do you expect to have that report?
Then what do we think, 12 months?
Probably.
It's a pretty extensive, but that's gonna give you full detailed analysis with conceptual design on all pump stations that reside in a floodplain in 12 months. That's the idea behind
Well,
it.
that sounds like a pretty good start.
Yeah.
This is 6 years away that we're going to the first phase, so
Yeah.
I would think if you're that far along this year or next year,
We have allocations in the budget for pump stations, it's just about how much of that budget would be eaten up year over year.
So then it would, if I'm understanding correctly, the motion would be to accept the report and direct staff to develop a recommendation on how to implement the recommendations and report back in a year.
So fine,
So moved.
It's been moved, so you need a second for discussion.
Second.
and just to put but that does not exclude us from, if we were building new infrastructure, to holding it to these levels.
until this study what he's gonna be looking at is done, right? Because yes, the plan was that anything that's built new would be built to these criteria. Rather than having to retrofit them in 5 years or so.
Right, and I'm just concerned that if we did anything within the next year before the report came out,
Oh, yeah.
that would be built to the
Yes.
higher level. I don't want to have us put assets in that then we're going to have to immediately
Modified, right.
modify.
So then let's handle this in two motions. You have the one motion on the floor that's been seconded, and this is for reporting back for existing infrastructure. And then come with a motion to direct staff that future infrastructure be constructed with these recommendations in mind.
That's a new stage.
Perfect.
So we vote
You
on
need
the
to call
first
call for the
motion.
vote.
So we have a motion and a second. Do I have,
All in favor?
what's the feeling? Vote, yes, yea, nay? Vote,
Yes.
Yes.
yes. Okay.
So that is 5 yes, 0 no, 0 abstention. So then there's a motion to direct staff that future construction future BPW projects be consistent with these recommendations.
So move.
Second.
There.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? 0, 5-0.
We'll work with GMB for the standard.
Right? Open forum, general discussion, and an update from the Finance Committee. Richard Nichols and Kim Belfoy.
We had a committee meeting on Monday and basically reviewed 3 items that I'd like to report on. One was the debt ratio coverage policy, which we've agreed on, which we would like the board to review, but we didn't get it distributed in time. The second was a developers agreement, which has been drafted, but needs further work on it, which we're working on. And the third, but most important, is a financial framework for each of the 4 utilities on a 10-year projection to be able to better forecast the financial picture of what BPW is planning and how it can be financed to individually have a picture of each utility's financial stability and sustainability. And at the next meeting, I think we will be able to present something that's meaningful and helpful to see the progress.
So with that, I guess there will be no action on this item till
Right.
the reports come out, and we'll put it on the next agenda.
Yes.
And can I just add that, with us talking about the audit coming up, next year, it should be handled differently, that it will go to the finance committee first and then present it to the board. So probably in July of next year, it'll be presented to the finance committee, and then either the auditors will come, present to you guys as well, or the finance committee will come to you with, suggestions of acceptance.
That's great. I'd like it getting more involved, getting the financial experts involved. But when is your next meeting?
In August, to be determined.
Okay, great. Good.
Moving on, item 9, open forum general discussion on the 2023-2024 fiscal year audit. Kim, Austin, you're up.
Yeah, promote Kayla.
Oh, I'm sorry, yeah. And we have the auditor on.
Hi, can everybody hear me? All right. So my name is Kayla DeMar. I'm from Zellenkowski Axelrod. And I just want to run through kind of a high-level draft of where we're at with the audit. So the first thing I want to cover is the opinion on the financial statements. This is an unmodified opinion, which is the cleanest opinion you can get in an audit. There's no modifications. This year, there were a couple new GASB statements that were implemented. Those were GASB 94, GASB 96, and part of GASB 99. None of these statements had any impact either on the financials or the footnotes or Lewes. The next section of your report is going to be your financial statements. So overall, the information in your statement of net position was consistent with the prior year. Long-term debt is increasing with the continued draws on the state revolving fund loans. And there was some unearned revenue related to the ARPA grant. I'll refer you to management's discussion and analysis because Kim and Austin did a great job of going into the details of these transactions. On the revenues and expense side, there was an increase to net position of about 2.9 million, which was primarily driven by the increase in sales revenue. From a total standpoint, net position had about 6.5 million of unrestricted funds. So that's always a good sign of financial health. The next section of your report will be your footnotes. The pension information in footnote 10 is provided by an actuary. But otherwise, there are no sensitive disclosures in your report. Your RSI, required supplementary information, primarily relates to the pension disclosures that are required by GASB. And the other supplementary information breaks out the revenues and expenses by department, along with separating the capital asset information. The final piece of your report is the report on internal control over financial reporting. And again, here we issued an unmodified opinion with no findings. So that is always a great sign to see in your audit. There were no discrepancies with management, and I want to thank Kim and Austin. They always do everything they can to make this audit go as smooth as possible. So we really appreciate that. At this point, does anyone have any questions or concerns?
Okay, I think that from a process standpoint, what we typically do is we have it presented, you guys get to digest it, come back the next board meeting, you can provide comments to both Kim and I, and then we can circulate back to Kayla with whatever comments you may have, and then formally adopt this at the next board meeting.
The new GASB or whatever it's called that was implemented, what effect did it have?
The ones that were implemented this year had no effect on the financial statements or the disclosures.
Okay, and the ones coming up for next year, will they be difficult to implement? Will they be?
So there's nothing coming down the pike that's really significant. There are some minor tweaks to compensated absences that are coming up. And there are some changes in the financial reporting model, which are primarily just emphasizing what needs to be in management's discussion and analysis, what needs to be in RSI, but it should be nothing that's significant and will majorly change anything.
Thank you.
Any other questions from the board? Okay, so this will be on the August agenda also.
Yep.
Sounds like August.
Yeah. And kudos to, she does all the legwork, on this, she works together with Kayla, and these guys did a great job.
Well, thank you very much, Kayla. We'll talk to you next month.
Thank you. If you have any questions or concerns in the meantime, forward them to Austin or Kim and they'll get them over to me. Thank you.
All right,
Thanks.
thank you.
Thank you.
Moving on, item 10, open forum general discussion on the acceptance of Tower Hill Phase 6 and 7 water and sewer. So in your packets, you have the resolution, and at that point, I'll turn it over to Mike and Austin.
Yep, so this is a resolution, this follows suit with how we go about the acceptance process. You will have the resolution, which is accompanied with a letter from GMB confirming that all utilities have been installed, inspected, and meet all of our standards and are good to go. I believe there were a couple things where
Taken care of.
everything's been taken care of, as-built have been received. We do have an easement which will need executed and recorded. I'm waiting on a couple tax documents, but this acceptance is pending the recordation of this easement. Good.
I'll just add, so that's in the resolution, so
Yep.
should you adopt the resolution as drafted, it is conditioned on the recordation of the easement. That's what's gonna start the clock for the 1-year maintenance period and the ability to reduce the guarantee. The only thing I would suggest is it is a resolution, so we have the 2-step process. One is read in full or by title only, and then the other one is the actual action. When you get to the action on the resolution, I would also make note to authorize the president to sign the easement.
So do we have a motion to have the resolution read by title only?
So moved.
Second.
All
Second.
those in favor?
Aye.
President, members of the board, resolution number 24-002, a resolution of the Board of Directors of the Board of Public Works of the City of Lewes accepting the on-site utility improvements for phases 6 and 7 concerning the Tower Hill development. Mr. President, resolution number 24-002 has been read by title only and placed before the board for its consideration and adoption.
I have a motion to approve the resolution.
And to authorize the president to sign
The
the
secretary.
easement.
Oh, the president, so,
President and secretary, you see the test.
for the easement.
Oh, for the easement, correct, I'm sorry.
So moved.
Second?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Moving on then to open forum general discussions and review of the BPW bylaws. So they're in your packet under 11 and open it for discussion comments.
And just to introduce this a little bit, so the bylaws themselves actually require an annual review of the bylaws. So this is the opportunity to look through and raise anything that you want to change, any additions, deletions, and the like. Or if the board is comfortable with bylaws as they are, you can say no changes. But this is the opportunity for that annual review.
I have no changes.
So I just want to make a couple of comments. Section 2.6 compensation, even though it says we're authorized to be compensated, the board is not compensated. We collectively do this out of the sense of giving back to the community. So I just wanted to go on record on that one. Moving on.
So I don't get a raise this year.
No, you get a raise.
Same thing you got last year.
Five full max.
Gonna double my non-compensation.
And you're worth every penny, Barbara, like the rest of us are. So, under section 4.1, item 5. So this has been brought up several times in the past, and I think it might be time to close this out. Earl had brought this up multiple times, that it says here that the president shall have sole discretion over establishing meetings agendas unless overruled by 2/3 of the vote of the board. And so since it would be overruling the president's decision, it would be only 4 people. So it would be 2.64 people required to overrule the president. So I'm not sure how we would allocate that out. So the suggestion had been made that it be, if 2 people want something on the agenda, it would be placed on the agenda, regardless of what the president says.
Does it have
Oh,
to,
we'd already changed it, but
does it have
No,
to be
we've been discussing it
Yeah.
for,
does that have to be in writing, as a discipline? Or is it just,
Mike, you want to comment on?
It's the will of the board. I mean, I think that you can say if, just for, as a matter of practice, we can draft it to say that if at least 2 members request in writing that an item be placed on the agenda. But, I mean, it doesn't, you don't have to do that. Is that a good non-answer?
Yeah, because we have to be careful about FOIA relative to that
So just,
2 people can't talk to me about it.
and I think that's an important, just so we're clear. So as long as the discussion is limited to a topic to place on the agenda, but you're not actually discussing the topic, then that's okay. So for example, Richard, you can go to Barbara and you can say, I would like to discuss lights on, Savannah. And would you support that request? And Barbara can say yes. Then you can go to Tom and say, Barbara and I would like lights on Savannah on the agenda. That's all you can talk about. You can't talk about why or the policy or anything like that. But you can, and Barbara can say, let's talk about lights on Savannah.
And I mean, as practice, both press and I have always taken the position that if 2 people on the board want to discuss something, it's always been on the agenda. But I think just to clear up the codification of it,
So it would the request would go to you, not to Austin, or?
Yeah, so you would submit so Tom sets the agenda. Tom has the authority to set the agenda. You could give it to Austin and then Austin can pat, but at the end of the day,
Yeah.
Tom sets the agenda.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so what do we modify here? Do we rewrite this now, or?
So we can do one of two things. I can either take notes and come back next meeting with a specific written proposal the board adopts that's usually cleaner, or we can try to do it on the fly. My recommendation is let me take the note and come back next month.
Anyone have any objection to that?
Good.
All right,
From a practical standpoint, Austin puts the agenda together for the most part with the president. And I guess in practice, we could just mention to Austin that we want it on the agenda and he can mention it to the president. So I think that's,
I would
Actual
actually feel more comfortable that way.
yeah.
So that we're,
That's how we do it.
Clean.
The city uses the same practice
Yeah.
and we feed ours through LRAN as long as there's two that support it. And you guys, I see, already put names next to the relevant thing on the agenda, and so that's what we do likewise is, Richard and Williams for this item, that kind of thing.
and as press so eloquently pointed out, Austin is the brains. The rest of us are just mere puppets.
The last time he was your bodyguard, the last time I heard you speak. In Rehoboth.
And that was a joke. The other one is under section 5.3. It says the fourth paragraph, meeting procedure shall be at the discretion of the president and upon advice of legal counsel unless overruled by a simple majority of members of the board of directors. So Mike and I have talked about this one in that we don't actually have a formal procedure. We have precedent and so there's a little lack of clarity on what this item is in my mind. I don't know what everyone else's feelings
How
are.
what would you like to clear up? I'm unclear on that.
We all got our copy of Robert's Rules today, so.
Well, I prefer Chatham's rules. I think
Yeah,
it's been pointed
Chatham
out,
House
so.
Rules, yeah, I was explaining how they work.
I guess if everyone's comfortable with this, I'm fine. I just wanted to make sure that,
I'm comfortable with it.
Just so as I interpret that, and make sure we're all reading the same, as I interpret that, the president is responsible for controlling the order and discussion. That was a terrible way to phrase that. The president oversees the discussion. But if there is a difference of opinion in terms of how a rule should be interpreted or how orders of procedure should be handled, the board can overrule the president by a vote of the majority of the members present. So if Tom says, we'll go to this agenda item, and then Richard says, no, I want to go and I want to stay here, then you could overrule the president with a vote of a majority of those present.
So that would take a motion and a second and a
Correct.
vote?
And motion, second, and
Okay.
vote. Right.
okay. That was all I had. Anyone else have anything? So the action here then is to direct Mike to revise the bylaws and represent them next month. All right, item 12, open forum general discussion on the potential uses for the ARPA funds allocated to the city of Lewes, from the city of Lewes for $900,000. So I think Austin's put together a list of options or potential uses. And so I'm gonna turn it over to Austin at this point.
Yeah, so in your packets, you should have a document. It may be in there. Yep, Barbara's got it. What it is we printed out from the U.S. Department of Treasury the intended use of ARPA funds, and they can be fairly broad in your determination. We also reached out to the state. Kim actually touched base with them to see if you can actually combine ARPA funds with other federal funds that have been provided, either in the form of reducing the amount of debt service that you would have to take on by using the ARPA funds as like a supplemental, or adding the ARPA funds as supplemental should costs come in higher than the original amount. So a lot of those things, they were confusing at the beginning. I think as time progressed, we've kind of ironed them out. But just looking at our budget and thinking about the use of these funds, what really we wanted to do is start the discussion of how does the board want to use the funds? Do they want to use the funds on street projects like Manila, Monroe, and Railroad in Alaska? Does it want to focus on, for example, anything that has to do with a well field, the water tower, which is funded, but we don't know what those costs are going to come in like when we formalize that bid. The common header's been out. That looks like it's going to stay at the anticipated cost. We have the canal crossing project, obviously PFAS and what that will look like as time progresses and testing continues. And then looking at sewer, like we talked about these pump station modifications. Do we want to allocate a certain amount of money to the pump station piece? There's also kind of a unique one that would take us going back to the city, at least I would interpret that, is that they also allow you to use the funds for stormwater infrastructure, like green infrastructure. But the way that the current agreement is with the city, it specifically says water and sewer. So it would have to take some coordination with the city is using that as an allowable item with the agreement that we have with them, but just throwing it all out on the table so you guys can see, all these different types of uses for the funds and just narrow down kind of where we want to head. Lots of options. And again, like I said, you could, if you want to focus in and allocate, a certain amount here or a certain amount here, the idea behind this is almost, it's not a workshop session, but using it as, this is an open forum, we can discuss kind of where everybody's thoughts are. Do we want to focus on, the stormwater side? Do we want to focus on sewer? Do we want to allocate a portion of each?
So
I'd be interested in your recommendations, but you mentioned when we spoke about this, AMI as a possibility.
Yeah, they claim it as infrastructure, so it would be how you define infrastructure. It also labels anything that you do that talks about conservation of water. Obviously, if you were to put AMI in and you put it at a beach house that rents it out all summer long, they probably won't care what they use for water because they're running the house out. So it's just, there are unique aspects that you can use this for. But we from a staff level, we can say where we think we can use the money. We can use the money everywhere. But from talking through it from like a policy perspective, where you want to focus those funds or allocate those funds, then staff can kind of narrow down and come back with a more definite proposal.
So the other thing to keep in mind is we have to allocate the funds by the end of the year and then spend it by
Calendar year or?
Calendar.
And spend it by the end of next calendar year. So,
Calendar year 2026.
yeah, 2026.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm sorry. So we, going to projects that are going to be longer term, or as Austin, pointed out, like with the water tower or the header pipe, there might not even be the need for the extra funds. And we have lots of other projects. So it seemed like the money is fungible in our budget, that taking it and allocating it and using it is just going to conserve our cash reserves.
One thing that we still haven't got an answer on is if you allocate funds, but for whatever reason, those funds, aren't needed for a project, what is the process for reallocation? Or do you have to put a caveat to say, I want to use 100,000 here, 100,000 here, 100,000 here, and anything that doesn't get used would get attributed to any one of those other projects?
It seems it's just adding complexity once again, that the money is fungible. So taking it for a project that we're not already have grants or loans for would be the more ideal situation.
I'm thinking about the lead and copper rule.
I have, lead service line replacement is a part of, an allocated expense.
I was thinking in particular, our ratepayers, how are we going to deal with all the surveys that come back and people don't know what the piping is that goes into their house?
Yeah, so
And-
each company is kind of doing it different. I say company, municipality, could be a company like Tidewater or Artesian. What it comes down to is what the EPA ruling on lead and copper does. It says that from our perspective, we go through everything we have data-wise to say what we believe our services are. And that would be known data, work orders, as-builts, just our internal records. Private side, you can do that through, like we said, identification by the homeowner, which we ask you to take a picture. There's a whole online form you can submit. There's a video online you can submit, like I said previously. Should you not be able to identify it via your crawl space or your basement, then that comes down to you either hire a consultant, a contractor to go in and physically go onto the property and hydrovac down to find the service type, or we would do that ourselves. It's a very labor-intensive project, but what the EPA is looking for is you submit our inventory to the best of our knowledge, what we know, by October 16th. We believe that this is going to be an ongoing initiative, not just from us, but you're talking about every municipality, every public water company in the country, every water company in the country has to go through this process. Nobody really knows what the dollar figures are gonna look like, because then it goes down to replacement, who replaces private side. And those are some of the questions that, are unanswered.
It sounded like a lot of money was being poured into this from the federal government. Is this something that we anticipate getting funds for anyway? And would you want to use it on lead and copper? I think it's an important thing, but it seems like there's a lot of money flowing on that topic right now.
So there's a lot of money flowing, but what I will tell you is everybody's doing it differently because of the liability that comes with it. So you look at, and I've used this example in the past, DC Water, they originally anticipated $500 million. I mean, they're in it $2 billion for their replacement program. They are actually they have contractors going inside of homes and on private property pulling. What that does is you have to have almost like a consent or a waiver form from our contractor or our staff to be able to enter private property, and then some sort of agreement that, eliminates a 1-year warranty or whatever it may be. What others are doing, like the city of Baltimore, is they're actually going out to the market, going out to bid, and they're hiring 1, 2, 3 different plumbers or contractors and saying, hey, homeowner, you can go to any one of these and they have a contract price and they will replace it and then send us the bill.
Are most of them doing it out of their own funds, or are they getting grants and loans for this?
So what I think a lot of people are doing it on their own and then hoping that they're gonna go back and get reimbursed. I think the state has programs to where you can do a project where you have known lead, where you can get that paid for. The question is, you have to get to the point where you have known lead.
Yeah.
And that they're only gonna pay for the service line itself. But it's a very unique situation because you're getting into the determination of who owns what. And so if the board has to go out and there is no subsidy and has to take a loan out, you're essentially asking all ratepayers to subsidize the replacement of a private line that's not a depreciated asset.
Yeah.
but we're not the only ones going through that, that whole situation.
Then this goes back into the point of, with as complex as an issue of this and as unknown as the cost is, putting the ARPA funds into that versus may not meet the timing, or we may have to reallocate. And do we really want to get into that portion of it?
I had been thinking that, not having a full understanding of the rules, I was concerned that homeowners were going to have to pay for replacing their pipes and investigating what the, hiring somebody to do that digging to find out what their pipes are made of, because so many of us in this old part of the town certainly have encapsulated crawl spaces and therefore can't really tell from crawling down in there what their pipes are. So if it's not a homeowner responsibility, then no, I withdraw my suggestion, but.
Yeah, I mean, it's not
Yeah.
that lead and copper isn't important and that
Right,
we're not
right.
gonna follow through. It
Right,
just seems like the funding aspect that makes it a little complex.
so homeowners won't have to pay the cost of replacement.
There's a lot of uncertainty with it, but the idea was if there's federal funds coming in, the federal government doesn't want to be in a position where they're giving that money, that subsidy, to a homeowner. They want to give it to a municipality to then use those to take care of lead service lines, lead and copper.
Mentioned the extension of the canal crossing.
Yeah.
And that bothers us. I mean, not the project. The fact that we got a problem out there now, and it couldn't go any time, really. It's not very stable. So that would be something maybe that we could focus on.
Which it's funded, so that's funded at $2.9
Yeah.
million right now. That was a part of the package that we did for the water tower and the canal crossing.
So,
Can the money, the ARPA money, be looked at to accelerate projects that either aren't funded or are iffy, but need to be done sooner than later? Is there a time element that the ARPA funds could help solve?
I mean, you can elevate really any project that you want to do it faster. For example, we had Manila Railroad in Monroe and Alaska Avenue, most of them being city streets projects that are tied with BPW utilities. So it's a joint like Coleman Avenue that was done. But then you look like Alaska is a prime example. That is the main sewer line that feeds that entire side of town that goes through the marsh. It's an old clay pipe, goes through the marsh and ends up at Pump Station 8. A good project there would be lining that sewer main, which we've talked about with GMB during that time, and you would essentially have a brand new pipe that would eliminate I&I infiltration and inflow.
But you're gonna upsize that,
That is
so you couldn't line it.
whether it would be needed or not,
Yeah.
and that is dependent on the state park.
so just to amplify what Austin just said, is that is a clay sewer pipe with high I&I. So,
That's on the radar to be done sometime in the hereafter.
What I put down is everything that's scheduled in the time frame that the ARPA funds are valid for.
Okay.
Are we waiting on sizing that till the park makes a decision?
We've discussed this, the discussion with the park has been over 5 years, so you kind of get to a point where
It'd be a
You
shame
make
to put
decisions.
too small a pipe in and then have them decide, because
well, but any upgrade to the pipe would then be on,
Yeah.
we'd go back after Denmark.
no different than a developer.
And it might help us to accelerate the decision process with the park. That if we allocate the money and we tell them we're going to put in this size pipe, speak now or, you're,
You can do security infrastructure as well, so we talked, obviously, most people know about the well field. We talked about, security fencing around the well field to make it more secure, obviously being our only water source for the town, other than the interconnection of Tidewater, making it secure is top priority, but we did submit for the community reinvestment funds, which was, 45 million? But we did not receive any of those, so, one of those was for security, but we continue to monitor it.
So where do you place AMI? It's would help all our citizens. Help us too to manage our system. So, issue to everybody.
Yeah, it's how you define how AMI fits within that framework. I don't know if others have used it for AMI. I think majority of them have used it on water, sewer infrastructure, pump stations, water mains, lead service lines, those kinds of things. But it does talk about conservation of water usage, which it's the same thing with electric. A lot of people say AMI helps with conservation of electric. So.
Well, the 900,000
Yes,
is a finite number.
yes.
And we've got many, many projects that would far exceed that.
Yes.
It would seem that staff is in a better position to kind of allocate the full 90, even if some of it is overflow or attic stock, and incorporating, pushing the envelope one way or another on certain projects that staff has a better understanding to suggest to the board, here's our starting point. Here's what we would suggest you start thinking about.
And that's,
Does that make sense?
I'm okay with that,
Yes.
but what I will tell you is that if I would have done that for this month, AMI wouldn't have been on there. So then you go back, so if that gets brought up, then we go back to the drawing board for where we were going. So that was why the idea was to have a conversation, say from a policy perspective,
Right.
do you want to say we want to focus a lot of it in on X or in on Y? So then we could go back and say, okay, that's where we're going to focus. Like, do we want to focus on water? Do we want to focus on sewer? Do we want to focus on green infrastructure?
Yes, all of those.
Easy way around.
Or
I
should,
think that's the answer you're gonna
Yeah.
get when
Yeah.
you, at the moment, given the playing field.
I'm sort of on the same page with Richard, is where can you spend $900,000
Yes.
well in time that moves a couple of projects forward and, and get something done. I would prefer that they not be studies, that they not be, sort of responding to a cry about, public, but, in this discussion, we might need a new crane, we might need to line the pipe you were just talking about. Does a little bit of it help the people you're trying to annex at the end of
Hornkill?
Hornkill?
Hornkill, yeah.
We've allocated them money.
Well, good. What gets a lot of stuff done?
Yeah.
I think we'd like your recommendation. I would like your recommendation.
And AMI, doesn't that stand for Advanced Metering Infrastructure?
Right,
Yes, so,
right.
Can I mention something? Because as you mentioned, I think there's like a MOU or some kind of document that defined how the money was to be spent. And my understanding is that the staff spent a lot of time crafting that because it needs to be pretty specific when we get audited for how we spent it. So again, we're 5 months away from when it needs to be allocated. And we have things that we're doing as a city as well. So I'm not particularly interested in having staff allocate more of their resources to changing the use for what you came to us for, I think at this point, a year ago or more, when you told us it was the Headworks project, which is still in a red zone on the report that came from Infomart.
But the Headworks project is underway.
But you mentioned money's fungible. It can be spent and then that frees up cash flow for other things.
Fully.
And that's
I
what
understand.
we
I understand.
wrote the agreement with us, some specific uses. So now you're talking about going to other areas and spending time to do that. And I'm not, I'm just saying from the city standpoint, I think we've done our bit. And there's plenty of things, as you said, that you can spend the money on.
I agree with you, except I want to just clarify. The Headwork project is being worked. We've done the EQ tank. We're doing it's material acquisition. That's the issue there. It's supply chain.
Why
It's
can't
not
you
money.
purchase ahead of time? It's a PO. You can allocate the funds.
We've already done that portion.
Place the orders.
Yeah, a lot of this equipment is on order. It's just delivery time. However, I do agree with you, money is fungible, so rather than spending more time, let's pick a project or projects and move forward. So can we ask you to come back with a more detailed list, narrowing things down within the bounds of what we just discussed?
Whatever you.
So, try to stay away from anything that's going to require reallocation of funds.
I won't even touch it. And I simply just reviewed it and said about if you wanted to invest in stormwater, because I know it's hot topic.
Since our August agenda is going to be chock-a-block, next one, open forum, general discussion. Okay, so there's no action on this. We'll put it on the August agenda and go from there. So open forum, general discussion on pole attachment policy and a resolution updating the compilation of policies. Mike?
So I'll take it. So the purpose of this is to simply update our policies, but also add a section in there that talks about how we have a pole attachment agreement, a form agreement. And this is specific to any abandoned infrastructure. So when we come across situations, which, you guys have sent us that, where you have companies that abandon infrastructure on poles, we get to go back and we'll have a process associated with it where we send a letter notifying that company, giving them an allotted amount of time and then circling back.
And what we've done here is that with the pole attachment, the form pole attachment agreement that has been prepared and that was previously approved by the board and is being used going forward, this language matches what is in that agreement. So what the purpose of this resolution is to capture those poles that haven't yet signed onto the new agreement, but we have infrastructure or wires that are dangling or that are abandoned, and this affords the same rights and ability the board would have if there was the new agreement.
I think this is great.
Yeah, I make a motion that we approve the resolution. Oh, yeah,
Two-step if
Right,
that's
right.
the will of the board.
I move that the resolution be read by title only.
Second? All in favor? Aye.
Present members of the board, resolution number 24-003, a resolution of the Board of Directors of the Board of Public Works of the City of Lewes amending its compilation of policies regarding pole attachments. Mr. President, resolution number 24-003 has been read by title only and placed before the board for its consideration and adoption.
Do I have a motion to approve the resolution so read?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye. Presente.
Okay.
Old business, so just briefly, open forum general discussion on the wastewater treatment plan, long-range plan update. I think as most people know, we in the county met and did a presentation to the Rehoboth Beach Council on July 8th. It was a very high-level discussion to get the temperature from Rehoboth Beach of whether they were willing to proceed with the discussions and developing more details. I think as Austin pointed out, and when he spoke about this in his report, the meeting was very well attended. The reception from Rehoboth Beach was positive in respect to working out details and to further discussions. And for everyone's information, the workshop of July 8th was on Rehoboth Beach's website. We have placed a link on our homepage under the wastewater treatment plant splash page. So you can go directly to our website to view the scope of the meeting, or the entire meeting, and the presentation that was presented.
I'll just add, I viewed that as it was happening, and you guys, Austin and Tom, did a wonderful job. As did the county. I thought it couldn't have gone any better. The exhibits you had were right on, and I think it went extremely well. Thank you.
There was also some interesting theater there.
Yeah, I guess maybe a question is, 4 people stood up and spoke, pro and con, who are candidates for the Rehoboth Beach City Council. So my question would be, do you think that positive feeling that was in the meeting will survive the election?
I will make no comment on that. This is Rehoboth Beach's issue on that side.
Yeah, but
I understand your question, but yes, if everyone isn't aware, Rehoboth Beach's elections are in September, and there are 4 people. August, I'm sorry. That's right, so we said we would reconvene in September. And there were 4 candidates that are running for 2 open seats. 2 open seats. So, what we asked Rehoboth Beach is that, and we in the county, that we work towards a decision by the end of this year. So we would know which way to proceed, either whether it be on our own with the county or a tri-patriot agreement. And Stan Mills, who's the mayor of Rehoboth Beach, agreed that that timeline was feasible. So we don't have a yes, we don't have a no, but we have a let's keep talking. Austin, anything you want to add to that?
Yep, that's it.
So, with that, Board of Staff requests for agenda items for next month. We've already moved everything from this agenda.
Got one.
If not,
Well, plus you're gonna have a joint meeting with the city on next week too, so you
yeah.
probably should.
actually, that's a good point, Andrew. Next Monday, we have a joint session with the city. And so, what time is that meeting? 1 o'clock, so everyone's welcome to join. On that, call to the public. Mike, do we have anyone online? And call to the press. Bill?
I think I'm good. Just Well, one quick question. So the ARPA funds in 900,000, is that one big pool of money that you have to split?
So the city got, what did we get, 1.6 altogether originally? So, something like that. And so we've given, much like the way that they're thinking about it, we gave a little bit here and there. And so, yeah, they have a lump sum, and then they can allocate that for, the purposes of, as I mentioned, there was some form, was it an MOU or a resolution? It was called one or the other, which kind of defined how it would be used.
But that 900,000 is their 900,000?
Now.
Okay.
Yep.
Yeah, so just for clarities, ARPA funds go to municipalities. So we didn't get any direct ARPA funds. We got ARPA funds as the utility arm for the city of Lewes,
Okay,
from the city,
yeah. Okay, that's it. Thanks.
okay? All right. Motion to, do we need an executive session? Anyone? Okay,
Motion to adjourn.
motion to adjourn. Anyone get a second, Barbara? Don't leave her hanging out here.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you all.